Max Blumenthal, I want to thank you for being with us, Puffin Foundation Writing Fellow at the Nation Institute. His website, maxblumenthal.com. His latest article meets Sarah Palin's radical right-wing pals online at salon.com. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. As we turn now to the McCain's campaign strategy of repeatedly invoking Senator Obama's connection to former Weather Underground member Bill Ayers, now a professor at the University of Illinois, Chicago. It seems to very clearly have a serious effect of riling up crowds of McCain and Palin supporters, to a point that Senator McCain was booed at his own rally Friday when he attempted to defend his rival against character attacks.
I want to be president of the United States, and obviously I do not want Senator Obama to be. But I have to tell you, he is a decent person and a person that you do not have to be scared as President of the United States. Now, now look, if I didn't think I wouldn't be one heck of a lot better president, I wouldn't be running, okay? And that's the point.
The Republican presidential nominee was speaking to a crowd near Minneapolis Friday. His attempt to defend Senator Obama was met with jeers. At a Palin rally earlier in the week, Governor Palin referred to Senator Obama as a man connected to, quote, a former domestic terrorist. She said she was, quote, fearful of his vision of America.
I am just so fearful that this is not a man who sees America the way that you and I see America, as the greatest source for good in this world. I'm afraid this is someone who sees America as imperfect enough to work with a former domestic terrorist who had targeted his own country.
While Governor Palin was speaking about Obama, an audience member, it's believed, yelled out, "Kill him." It's unclear if Palin heard the remark, but she didn't respond. Obama was 8 years old when 40 years ago, Bill Ayers was a member of the militant anti-war group, the Weather Underground. Today, Bill Ayers is a tenured professor and leading expert on education reform at the University of Illinois, Chicago. At another moment last week, during the presidential debate, McCain referred to Obama as, quote, that one.
There was an energy bill on the floor of the Senate, loaded down with goodies, billions for the oil companies, and it was sponsored by Bush and Cheney. You know who voted for it? You might never know. That one. You know who voted against it? Me.
Our next guest, joining us from Boston, is Francis Schaeffer, the best-selling author of Crazy for God, How I Grew Up as One of the Elect, Helped Found the Religious Right, and Lived to Take all, or almost all, of it back. He's the son of the late evangelist Francis Schaeffer, considered himself a lifelong Republican. He voted for John McCain in 2000. McCain even endorsed one of Schaeffer's earlier books on military service. But on Friday, Frank Schaeffer published an op-ed piece in the Baltimore Sun, excoriating McCain for, quote, feeding the most unhinged elements of our society, the red meat of hate. The op-ed is entitled An Open Letter to John McCain. Frank Schaeffer joins us now from Boston. Welcome to Democracy Now!
Thank you, Amy.
It's very good to have you with us. Do you by chance have the letter in front of you?
Yes, I do. I have it right here. What would you like to hear?
Could you read it to us?
Sure. This is the op-ed. John McCain, if your campaign does not stop equating Senator Barack Obama with terrorism, questioning his patriotism, and portraying Mr. Obama as not one of us, I accuse you of deliberately feeding the most unhinged elements of our society the red meat of hate, and therefore of potentially instigating violence. At a Sarah Palin rally, someone called out, "Kill him." At one of your rallies, someone called out, "Terrorist." Neither was answered or denounced by you or your running mate, as the crowd laughed and cheered. At your campaign event Wednesday in Bethlehem, PA, the crowd was seething with hatred for the Democratic nominee, an attitude encouraged in speeches there by you, your running mate, your wife, and the local Republican chairman. Shame. John McCain, in 2000, as a lifelong Republican, I worked to get you elected instead of George W. Bush. In return, you wrote an endorsement of one of my books about military service. You seem to be a man who put principle ahead of mere political gain. You have changed. You have a choice. go down in history as a decent senator and an honorable military man with many successes, or go down in history as the latest abettor of right-wing extremist hate. John McCain, you are no fool, and you understand the depths of hatred that surrounded the issue of race in this country. You also know that post 9/11, to call someone a friend of a terrorist is a very serious matter. You also know we are bitterly divided in this country on many other issues. You know that sadly in America, violence is always just a moment away. You know that there are plenty of crazy people out there. Stop, think. Your rallies are beginning to look, sound, and feel and smell like lynch mobs. John McCain, you're walking a perilous line. If you do not stand up for all that is good in America and declare that Senator Obama is a patriot fit for office and denounce your hate-filled supporters when they scream terrorist or kill him, history will hold you responsible for all that follows. John McCain and Sarah Palin, you are playing with fire, and you know it. You are unleashing the monster of American hatred and prejudice to the peril of all of us. You are doing this in wartime. You are doing this as our economy collapses. You are doing this in a country with a history of assassinations. Change the atmosphere of your campaign. Talk about the issues at hand. Make your case, but stop stirring up the lunatic fringe of haters, or risk suffering the judgment of history and the loathing of the American people forever. We will hold you responsible. So that was the piece, and it got quite a response, actually. I've been swamped with email, and encouragingly, most of it favorable.
Now, Frank Schaeffer, you supported John McCain in 2000, as you write.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned my book, Crazy for God, how I grew up as one of the elect and helped found the religious right and lived to take all or almost all of it back. And really, people who have read that book will know that I come from an evangelical family that was really evangelical royalty in the 70s and 80s. My father was a frequent guest in the Reagan, Bush, and also even the Ford White House, Bush first, that is. And my background, therefore, was very unthinkingly Republican. We were always just associated with these folks. And so in 2000, I was actually on a number of evangelical and right-wing stations, like with Ollie North, for instance, on his radio station, pleading the cause of John McCain, who I thought would be a much better candidate than George W. Bush. But really, over the years, distancing myself from that evangelical background, as I talk about in the book, I've come to a place where I really see what Max Blumenthal was talking about in the earlier part of your show. And that is, you know, speaking of secessionists in Alaska, the evangelical right-wing subculture in this country, particularly the Assemblies of God, by the way, that Sarah Palin comes from, have really already seceded from our union in the sense of the fact that they have, you know, between homeschooling and their own schools, their own publishing, their own radio, their own TV, many times very fundamentally anti-American, waiting for the apocalypse, waiting for Jesus to take everybody away in the rapture, weirdly Christian Zionist, and at the same time assuming that the Jews will all be killed in Armageddon when Jesus comes back as part of their rapture enterprise. You know, just to put it frankly, the evangelical movement that I grew up in as a child used to be a fairly respectable and respectful group of people. They regarded themselves as Americans and part of the system. And now I really think it's been taken over by a group of people that have to be described fairly as just wingnuts. And if you read Crazy for God, you're going to find through my own journey coming out of the 50s and 60s that I watched all this change. I mean, you know, I preached from Jerry Falwell's pulpit. He sent a jet up to get me once. You know, I know Pat Robertson and Dr. Dobson and all these people personally. And the fact of the matter is the whole movement's gone off the rails. And the dangerous thing about Sarah Palin is that there's a very direct line from her to the kind of extremism that would literally destroy this country. So, you know, when you look at what 8 years of George Bush has done to our economy on one side, when you look at the war we're in Iraq, and by the way, my son was in the Marine Corps and fought twice in Afghanistan, took one mission to Iraq, one to the Horn of Africa. So I speak of someone who, as someone whose son actually was out there getting shot at because of these policies. When you look at all this, as I talk about in the book, what you see is that we really are at a crossroads here. This election is not just an election. This election is a mirror that is being held up to the United States saying you can choose what sort of country you want to be. Do you want to be with the Sarah Palin wingnuts who are bearing high-powered rifles in their gardens for the time when the United Nations sends Black Hawk helicopter-type missions against America? You know, do you want to assume that Jesus will be coming back to rapture everybody, so you hope there's an atheist co-pilot in every plane? I know this sounds laughable, but there are tens of millions of Americans who are buying into this crap. Or do you want to be a member of the United States of America, Republican, Democrat, left, right, center, but part of the American family? Or have you already seceded from our union? So basically, I think what this election's about, and what my book is certainly about, is besides the politics, besides whether we have Barack Obama